Lisa adjusted the pearl necklace around her neck, her fingers trembling slightly. The cold air in the courthouse seemed to seep into her bones, but she kept her back straight. She had promised herself she wouldn't break. Not here, not in front of Greg. Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. Across the aisle, her soon-to-be ex-husband sat with an infuriatingly smug expression, lounging back in his chair like he was watching a dull play. His expensive suit was perfectly pressed, his golden cufflinks glinting under the fluorescent lights. His mistress, Olivia, a woman barely older than their daughter, sat beside him, whispering something in his ear before they both chuckled. Lisa clenched her hands into fists under the table. This was it. The final step in a divorce that had blindsided her 6 months ago. 25 years of marriage, discarded like an old coat. Greg had left her for Olivia without so much as a second thought, filing for divorce before Lisa had even processed what was happening. He had taken their shared accounts, their vacation home, and worst of all, her dignity. She had wanted to believe there would be some justice in the process. That Greg, who had once been the man she trusted with everything, would at least be fair. But he hadn't been. Not even close. She had overheard him once, laughing over drinks with his lawyer. She won't get a damn dime. Lisa was a housewife, not a business partner. The judge will eat it up. His words had played in her head ever since, gnawing at her like a disease. Lisa's lawyer, Daniel Harper, leaned toward her. "Stay calm," he murmured. "Everything's going exactly as planned." Planned. Lisa wanted to laugh. The reality was, Greg's lawyers had filed motions that left her with almost nothing. He had manipulated their finances, shifting assets before she even knew the divorce was coming. And now, sitting across from her with that insufferable grin, he thought he had won. Lisa swallowed down the bitterness rising in her throat. Not yet, she told herself. Not yet. The judge, a stern woman with graying hair, tapped her gavel. "Let's proceed with the final asset division," she said. "Mr. Carson, your attorneys have filed a motion asserting that Mrs. Carson has no claim to your business assets. Is that correct?" Greg's lead attorney, a sleek-looking man in his early 40s, stood up. "Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Carson's business was founded solely with his funds and was maintained entirely by his efforts. Mrs. Carson did not contribute financially or professionally to the success of Carson Industries." Lisa felt her lawyer tense beside her. She bit her lip. That's a lie. She had been there from the beginning. When Greg had quit his steady job to start his own company, when he had begged her to stay home and take care of their daughter so he could focus on success. She had balanced their budget, supported him through sleepless nights, and even used her small inheritance to keep them afloat in the early years. And now he had rewritten history. Greg leaned forward, flashing a condescending smile. "Lisa, let's be reasonable. You've lived comfortably for years without having to work. I provided for you. It's time to move on." Lisa opened her mouth, but Daniel beat her to it. "Your Honor," he said smoothly, standing up. "My client has no objection to Mr. Carson's claim, if it were true. However, we have substantial evidence to prove otherwise." Greg's smirk faltered for just a second before he composed himself. "That's ridiculous." The judge nodded. "Proceed." Daniel walked to the center of the room. "Your Honor, let's take a closer look at Mr. Carson's finances." Lisa's heart pounded. This was it. Daniel pulled out a stack of documents. "We have evidence that, over the last 6 months, Mr. Carson has transferred over $5 million into offshore accounts under shell companies. Money that should have been declared in these proceedings." The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Greg shifted in his seat. His lawyer quickly whispered something in his ear, but his smirk was gone. "That's absurd," Greg finally said. "I've done no such thing." Daniel didn't even blink. "Then, Your Honor, I would like to submit bank statements and wire transfers under the name of G.O. Holdings, which, coincidentally, match the initials of Gregory Oliver Carson." Lisa could feel Greg's panic from across the room. His lawyer scrambled. This is inadmissible. Where did this information even come from? Daniel simply smiled. A forensic accountant we hired to investigate suspicious activity. You see, my client found it odd that a man claiming to have no extra funds had recently purchased a yacht under an alias. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Greg's hands curled into fists. Lisa took in the moment. The way his face paled, the way Olivia shrank back in her chair, suddenly looking a lot less confident. The judge arched an eyebrow. Mr. Carson, do you have an explanation for this? Greg hesitated. Lisa held her breath. This wasn't over yet. The courtroom held its breath, waiting for Greg's response. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. His hands, which had been confidently resting on the table, curled into fists. Olivia shifted uncomfortably beside him, her perfectly manicured nails tapping nervously on the polished wood of the defense table. Greg opened his mouth, but his lawyer was quicker. Your Honor, I would like to request a recess to review these documents. His voice was sharp, edged with panic. Lisa's lawyer, Daniel, leaned in. That won't be necessary, he said smoothly. We have a forensic accountant who is ready to testify under oath regarding these transactions. Greg's face darkened. Lisa felt a strange sense of satisfaction watching him sweat. For months, he had walked around like he was untouchable, smirking in court, whispering to his mistress, treating her like she was nothing more than an inconvenience to be discarded. But now, for the first time, that confidence was cracking. The judge peered down at Greg. Mr. Carson, do you wish to respond to these allegations? Greg cleared his throat, trying to regain control. This is ridiculous, he muttered. My financial records were already submitted to the court. If there was anything illegal, my accountant would have caught it. Daniel didn't even blink. Your accountant is on our witness list, Mr. Carson. Would you like to hear his sworn statement? Greg's jaw clenched. Olivia, who had been silent up until now, leaned toward him, whispering something urgently in his ear. Her expression was no longer amused. It was anxious. Lisa watched as realization dawned in Olivia's eyes. She didn't know. Greg had been lying to her too. Your Honor, Greg's lawyer tried again, his voice tight. These documents could be fabricated. We need time to. They're not fabricated, Lisa interrupted, her voice clear and steady for the first time that day. You really thought I'd sit back and let you steal everything, Greg? Greg turned to her, his eyes flashing with fury. Don't play the victim, Lisa, he spat. You lived off my money for years. You didn't even work. Lisa didn't flinch. I didn't need to work. I was too busy raising our child and holding our family together while you chased your career. While you built your company, who took care of your home? Who managed the finances when we were struggling? Who gave up her inheritance so you wouldn't lose the business in the early years? Greg scoffed, but his smirk didn't return. Daniel straightened. Your Honor, Mrs. Carson's inheritance was used to pay off the company's initial debt, making her an early investor in Carson Industries. This means she has a legal claim to its assets. The courtroom murmured. Greg turned white. Lisa's heart pounded. She had waited so long for this moment. I want to add something else, Lisa continued, her voice unwavering. She turned her gaze to Olivia, whose expression had shifted from nervous to downright panicked. Olivia, did you know Greg was moving money behind your back too? Olivia blinked. What? Lisa tilted her head. Oh, you didn't know. Funny. Because some of those offshore transfers weren't just business accounts, they were personal withdrawals. She smiled sweetly. You know what that means, right? That little apartment he bought for you? That wasn't his money. It's technically still our marital asset. Olivia's eyes widened. Lisa watched in satisfaction as the young woman turned to Greg, her face twisted in rage. You told me everything was settled, Olivia hissed. Greg grabbed her wrist. Not now, Olivia. She yanked her arm away. You lying piece of. Enough. The judge's voice cut through the chaos. "I will not tolerate outbursts in my courtroom." She turned back to Greg. "Do you deny these financial transfers?" Greg's mouth opened, closed. For the first time, he had nothing to say. The judge took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "Given the new evidence, I am ruling in favor of Mrs. Carson. She is entitled to 50% of all disclosed and undisclosed marital assets." Greg jolted. "You can't." "I can, and I just did." The judge's gavel hit the wood. "Additionally, given Mr. Carson's financial misconduct, I am ordering an independent audit of his business and personal finances. Any concealed assets will be subject to additional penalties, including criminal charges." Lisa felt the weight lift from her chest. It was over. Greg's face was a mask of fury, his hands gripping the table so tightly his knuckles turned white. Olivia, on the other hand, looked like she had just been punched in the stomach. "You son of a," she started, then let out a hysterical laugh. "I should have known. I should have known you'd screw me over too." Greg turned to her, his voice low. "Shut up, Olivia." "Oh, now I should shut up." Olivia stood abruptly. "You told me you'd take care of me. You said I wouldn't have to worry about anything." Lisa watched with quiet amusement as Olivia grabbed her purse and stormed toward the exit. But before she left, she turned back one last time, looking at Greg like he was nothing more than trash on the sidewalk. "I wasted 2 years on you," she sneered. "I should have picked a richer idiot." The courtroom gasped. Then Olivia was gone. Lisa turned back to Greg. His smirk was long gone. He sat stiffly, his face unreadable, his empire crumbling before him. Lisa leaned in just slightly. "Looks like you won't be smirking anymore, Greg." Greg sat frozen, his entire world unraveling before him. The courtroom had already started to clear, murmurs of shock and amusement filling the air. Lisa, however, remained seated, watching her ex-husband's downfall unfold in real time. His face, once so arrogant, was now drained of color. His jaw clenched, his fingers twitching like he wanted to lash out but knew he couldn't. The power he had wielded over her for so long was slipping away, and there wasn't a damn thing he could do about it. Lisa let out a slow breath. It felt surreal. After months of uncertainty, fear, and betrayal, she had finally won. Daniel leaned toward her. "We still have paperwork to finalize, but with the judge's ruling, Greg won't be able to weasel out of the settlement. Plus, the forensic audit might uncover even more assets. If we're lucky, he'll be paying penalties for years." Lisa nodded, barely able to believe it. "Thank you, Daniel, for everything." Her lawyer smiled. "It wasn't just me. You fought for yourself, Lisa. And you won." She had. Greg let out a sharp breath, forcing himself to stand. His lawyer was already gathering paperwork in silence, his face tight with frustration. He had clearly realized that his client was no longer the winning party. Greg finally turned to Lisa, his smirk long gone, replaced with something else. Resentment, maybe even a hint of fear. "This isn't over," he muttered under his breath. Lisa simply tilted her head. "Oh, but it is." She gave him one last slow smile before standing up and walking away. As Lisa stepped outside the courthouse, the cool afternoon breeze hit her face. It felt like a cleansing wind, sweeping away the last remnants of her past life. For so long she had believed she was powerless, that Greg held all the cards, that her sacrifices, her years of devotion, meant nothing. But today she had proven him wrong. Her phone buzzed in her purse. She pulled it out and saw a message from her daughter, Emily. "Emily, Mom, I saw the ruling. He got what he deserved. So proud of you. Let's celebrate tonight." Lisa's heart swelled. She quickly typed back, "Lisa, absolutely. Dinner at our favorite place. My treat." She slipped her phone back into her purse and let out a small, contented laugh. For the first time in years, she wasn't looking back. She was looking forward. A new chapter had begun, and it was hers to write. 2 months later, Greg sat in his half-empty office, drowning in financial and legal headaches. The audit had uncovered even more hidden assets, leading to hefty fines and tax investigations. His business had taken a hit, investors pulling out after the scandal. And worst of all, Olivia, his once loyal mistress, had taken to social media to air all of his dirty laundry, including embarrassing details of his financial missteps. He had lost money. He had lost power. And he had lost the one thing he thought he'd always have: control. As he scrolled through another news article detailing his financial troubles, he gritted his teeth. Lisa had won, and there was nothing he could do about it. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story and tell us where you're watching from.